Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So today we're going to have another rollicking round on the discussion of dependent origination. So I have prepared a document on one of the suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses on dependent origination. And this is number 12, SN 12.2 is the number of the actual sutta. So dependent origination is one of the important teachings that the Buddha has laid out for us to consider for ourselves. And this is also a way towards liberation if we understand how we cause ourselves suffering and how we can escape from suffering. And this is what the Buddha had considered before his awakening, as how can we escape from the suffering. So I'm going to share the document. So looks like it's shared. Welcome. So we're just starting. I've just shared the document, and last week I just said this is another rollicking round on the discussion of dependent origination. So this is the second week I'm talking about dependent origination, looking at the suttas. And last week we talked about the city. This is a SN 1265. And the reason why I put this little extract here is because it's going to explain why the order in which the Buddha is describing dependent origination is being discussed in this sutta as well. So before the Buddha was awakened, he was pondering. The reason why he went forth into monastic life, or went forth into the renunciant life, is that he saw the suffering in the world, this pervasive dukkha and the conflict people got themselves in. And so during his time before his awakening, he was wondering, when now will an escape be discerned from the suffering headed by aging and death? Then, because it occurred to me, when what exists does aging and death come to be? By what is aging and death conditioned? So he started this whole contemplation of dependent origination, starting with the condition of aging and death and the suffering. It's headed by the fact that we all are destined to die is one thing that is very distressing if you think about it and you don't understand the nature of things. So we'll go to the next sutta. So this is called the analysis, and this is a number 2 in the Samyutta Nikaya on the dependent origination, the connected discourses on dependent origination. So this is Atsawati, and this is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Bhikkhus, I will teach you dependent origination, and I will analyze it for you. Listen to that and attend closely, and I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. And what, bhikkhus, is dependent origination? With ignorance as a condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations, consciousness, and then it's ellipsed to such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So he goes through the causal chain. Welcome. So he's just, this is ellipsed. And I have the full chain down. We'll go over that later, but so then he's going to start with, as I was saying, the contemplation starting with aging and death, because this is how he originally contemplated it before he fully developed an understanding of it. And what, bhikkhus, is aging and death? The aging of various beings and various orders of being. Their growing old, brokenness of teeth, grayness of hair, wrinkling of skin, decline of vitality, degeneration of the faculties. This is called aging. So I remember as a child, even like seeing, because pets will grow old a lot more quickly than human beings, and just kind of being dismayed at my cat getting old. It was like, so we can see not just human beings, but all beings that are born will age, and the passing away of various beings from the various orders of beings. So the various orders of beings, it's like, human being, animal, different realms of existence. They're perishing, breaking up, disappearance, mortality, death, completion of time, breaking up of the aggregates, laying down of the carcass or the corpse. This is called death. Thus, aging and death are together called aging and death. So, yeah, I think too, when a person is aging, I get past a certain age, and you can't kind of deny that death is death is inevitable, and yeah, and even looking at your own body, it's almost like it's a slow dying process. It's aging. It's because uh, uh, yeah, so it's a compound word. Aging as death is a jara maranang. And what is birth? So this is because he was looking originally before his awakening, he was trying to understand why there was death, and the reason for death is birth. Anyone coming to birth will die. So that was his conclusion. Anyone having been born, we die eventually. So birth of the various beings into the various orders of being, their being born, descent into the womb, production, the manifestation of aggregates, the obtaining of the sense bases. This is called birth. So this is very clear that when he's talking about birth and aging and death, that he is talking about the actual physical reality of being born and dying. So what is existence? There are these three kinds of existence: sense sphere existence, form sphere existence, formless sphere existence. This is called existence. It's bhava. And what bhikkhus is clinging? There are four kinds of clinging: clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and vows, clinging to a doctrine of self. This is called clinging. And what bhikkhus is craving? There are 6 classes of craving: craving for forms, craving for phenomena. Oh, so I'm sorry, I missed a line. Craving for sounds, craving for odors, craving for tastes, craving for tactile objects, craving for mental phenomena. This is called craving. So this is craving at the 6 sense bases. And what bhikkhus is feeling? There are 6 classes of feeling. I'm used to saying 3 because there's 3 types of feeling, but he's delineating it according to the senses. Classes of feeling: feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, feeling born of mind contact. This is called feeling. So this is a contact is pasa. And what bhikkhus is contact? There are 6 classes of contact: eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. This is called contact. I'm going to get into more detail about these. And what bhikkhus are the 6 sense bases: the eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, the mind base. These are called 6 sense bases. And what bhikkhus is name and form? Feeling, perception, volitional, contact, attention. This is called name. So this is nama rupa. And so this is the mental aspect. Nama is feeling. All these things are mental. The actual feeling that arises, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling, and our perceptions, volition or sankhara, and the contact, this felt sense. It's all, it seems like even with the body, it's like it feels like the body, bodily sense, but we perceive it by the mind. And the Buddha was aware of that. Attention, this is called nama or name, and the 4 great elements and the form derived from the 4 great elements. So this is a material. This is matter. So this would be, in the time of the Buddha, they considered all matter is made out of earth, water, fire, and air. So even in our scientific consideration, you think about earth would be like solidity, and then the fluidity would be water, and air is a gaseous, and then everything is influenced by heat. All those forms of matter are influenced by heat. So this is the way they talked about it. So this is all solid matter is composed of these things. So this is nama rupa, name and form. And what is consciousness? What bhikkhus is consciousness? There is these 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness. This is called consciousness. And what bhikkhus are volitional formations? There are these 3 kinds of volitional formations: the bodily volitional formation, the verbal volitional formation, the mental volitional formation. These are called volitional formations. And what bhikkhus is ignorance? Not knowing suffering, not knowing the origin of suffering, not knowing the cessation of suffering, not knowing the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called ignorance. So this is ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Thus, bhikkhus with ignorance as a condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as a condition, consciousness, and so on. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of volitional formations. With the cessation of volitional formations, cessation of consciousness, and so on. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So this is a Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, and it was ellipsed. And I like to compare the two. This is Bhante Sujato's translation, and so he has actually the full all 12 links here listed in the the classic. I just touch it a certain way and then it expands. So here I just took an extract of the sutta so you can see Bhante Sujato's translation of the factors of dependent origination. And you can see the Pali here too. This is one of the beautiful things that Bhante Sujato has done on Sutta Central. If you're not familiar with that, I would recommend you explore that because it has so much, it's so rich. It's got the Pali as well as the English, and then you can click on a word and get a translation of the word. So, paticca samuppada is the word that's usually translated as dependent origination. And it's a 12 links of usually, but there's sometimes 10 or fewer links are listed, depending on the teaching and how the Buddha is speaking about it. But classically, most people are familiar with 12 links. So, and what is dependent origination? Ignorance is a requirement for choices. So Bhante Sujato translates sankhara as choices, and rather than volitional formations is what Bhante Bodhi translates it as. Choices are a requirement for consciousness, and that's vijnana. Consciousness is a requirement for name and form, namarupa. Name and form are requirements for the 6 sense fields, and that's salayatana. The 6 sense fields are a requirement for contact, and that's pasa, or paso is a different form of it. Contact is a requirement for feeling, vedana. Feeling is a requirement for craving, tanha. Craving is a requirement for grasping, upadana. I think Bhante Bodhi translates okay, that's right. Upadana is grasping or clinging or taking up. Grasping is a requirement for existence, bhava. Continued existence is a requirement for rebirth. So sometimes it's just stated as birth, but Bhante Sujato likes to emphasize that the Buddha is talking about rebirth. Bhava pachaya jati. Rebirth is a requirement for old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress to come to be. Jati pachaya jaramam soka parideva dukkha domana supaya sapi. Is that right? Supaya sa sambhavanti. Okay. So sambhavanti is actually the one verb that exists in this whole list. It was pointed out on a teaching I listened to. That's how this whole massive suffering originates. And so have sambhavanti here, comes to be, happens, occurs, takes place. So there's a digital Pali translator dictionary on Sutta Central, and I've just cut and pasted translations to make it more clear. So, as I was saying, the Buddha, his inquiry before his awakening started with aging and death, and that's how he came to understand the whole causal chain by this inquiry. So here I have various translations. So I could pause now if people have a question or welcome, Ryan. Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Sadhu. I was wondering about the difference between dependent origination as the rebirth and death of the physical body, and then kind of like the birth and death of phenomena. And I know that there's different interpretations,
Yeah.
and like one would be that dependent origination applies to everything that happens in your mind. And yeah, how do you relate to that, and what can a practitioner do um, to help use this as a skillful means to alleviate suffering?
Yeah, I think you can look at it that way, but it's not to negate. It's a kind of like a microcosm of like there's this endless rounds of rebirth, and this is what we're dealing with. And within that, we can see the rising and passing of phenomena. But clearly, the Buddha is talking about the physical body coming into rebirth and aging and dying, and this endless round of that. But within that, there is the dukkha of this present life and how that arises and how that comes into being. So, our this one thing what we're learning with when we do a meditation practice is observation. So having the stillness of mind, the quietude of mind, to be able to really observe the rising and passing of phenomena clearly. People get deep insight into that but we can also see within our daily lives too, how when we get into the more detailed discussion of each element, you start seeing how their inner uh, there's causation occurring at all times. Like there's a certain, because of our ignorance, we suffer, basically. And because of ignorance, uh, we make, there's volition and comic activity, and then it perpetuates uh, within our lifetime dukkha arising. Um, so Vijnana here we have if I start talking about it, might explain it a little bit, what you're asking about. So Awija here, I've just taken what I've learned is a misunderstanding of reality is one way of looking at Awija, and or ignorance. Most people translate this word as ignorance. You could say stupidity at first. I think Ajahn Brahm said stupidity. That we're just stupid. He likes to be blunt. But misunderstanding, not understanding the Four Noble Truths and the three characteristics. So, and I have pachaya, support, requisite, necessity. So, sankhara, as I was saying, sankhara is one of the aggregates, as well as this volition that kind of propels us from lifetime to lifetime. So, if we see that even in this current lifetime, we're making wise or stupid choices. And so that relates to kama, or willed activity that may arise. So it starts out as a mental element, and then manifests in actions of body and speech. So he says sankhara is intention, volitional formations, choice, karmic activity. So it's intentional. It's our intentions. So vijnana is consciousness, awareness, cognition, and then the fifth of the five aggregates. So this is where the consciousness in the dependent origination, if you're just thinking about rebirth, it's the rebirth consciousness. But also, once it's taken root in a physical form, then it's the fifth of the five aggregates. And so it's our awareness. So, when you're meditating and you're this is what we want to cultivate, is our awareness of phenomena. So we'll see here I have here, there's a six consciousnesses as how it manifests as an aggregate. Because once we've taken birth or conceived in the womb, then the six senses are developing. And once we're born, then we're engaging in the sights, sounds, smells, touch, um, and thoughts, or mental phenomena. And this is what we see. This is something that we can see arising and passing. What we're creating the world, we're creating our our world through the six senses. And I think this is what people, when their awareness becomes very acute, you start seeing how we're piecing all of this together and how transient it is and how, ephemeral it is. And so this is the phenomenon that you'll actually, when the mind is really still and you're just at the point where you're just seeing the rising and passing of things. This is one way that that can be understood, I think. I don't know if you've had the experience of that, but once the mind the mind becomes very clear, then you can start to see how we are creating the world and how transient it all is. So nama rupa, name and form, is also translated as mind, body, mentality, and materiality. So this is talking here. I skipped over this here, but consciousness conditions mind and body. If consciousness were not to come into the mother's womb, would mind and body develop there? No, Lord. So this is the Buddha speaking to Ananda, and this is in the Digha Nikaya 15. So this is really clearly stating that this vijnana uh, is, they're talking about rebirth consciousness, but once the conception has happened, then it's the sixth sense consciousness. It becomes the aggregates. Is this making sense?
I struggle with this part. I get that ignorance leads to volitional formations because um ignorance of the Four Noble Truths means that we keep producing formations trying to like grasp. It's like the craving for sensual indulgence and becoming and non-becoming. So like that ignorance conditions us to have like willful intentions, and then those willful intentions need consciousness to kind of like carry out and create the world to interact with.
Mhm.
But I don't really get the consciousness to name and form to the six sense fields. That's my big hang up with dependent origination. So
Yeah, I
if
think
you
if you're looking at the rebirth, if you're considering in terms of rebirth, then it makes more sense. If you're just looking at the moment to moment to moment experience, then it doesn't make as much sense. And if you look at Majjhima Nikaya 18, the Honeyball Sutta, it talks about consciousness in a different way. It's talking about, well, if you look at also Nama Rupa, you have to have the physical eye. So that would be the Rupa. And then the physical forms would be what the sights, out exterior forms. And then Salayatan has a sixth sense field. So you have the physical eye and then the eye consciousness. And from that consciousness, the exterior form, the physical eye, uh, all three coming together as contact. And then from that arises Vedana. So it's looking at it in a different configuration. It's not looking at it as the links in the chain of what gives rise to what. Um, so as far as our momentary experience, the configuration is different. And then that gives rise, Vedana gives rise to, so we can see that it does, they're interrelated, and they're getting more meshed instead of one leading to another, to another, to another. They're kind of, because, the pleasant feeling, and then what's not here, that's in the Honeyball Sutta, the Majjhima Nikaya 18, is perception. Perception isn't in this chain, but it is within our daily experience. Because perception is learned. Because I've had an experience with the contact, which is dependent on eye consciousness and the physical eye, and so I have to be aware of, like, of I could be in a room and not be aware of the presence of something, and then I see it, and then that's the contact, is it, because I've brought awareness to it. And so then a lot of times the Vedana arises because of perception. Because if I see something, like I see something that I consider beautiful, and so then that's my perception of beauty, and then it's pleasant. But I could have the perception at the nose, and that's pretty instantaneous. That's pretty direct. If it's a pleasant odor or unpleasant odor, um, then the perception is quite direct. The nose will tell us. But sights and sound can be very loud, and then it's jarring and unpleasant. So that can be pretty direct. But I could just hear a sound, and then I perceive it as something. Like I'm hearing a sound in the distance, and it's like maybe this chainsaw. And it by itself isn't particularly a terrible sound, but then my perception is they're cutting down trees. And then it becomes unpleasant, but that's more at the mind door. So this is where the Honeyball Sutta talks perceptions in response to Vedana. But that would be more arising at the mind because of my perception of it. So I have these definitions here. Is that helpful? Is that helpful at all?
Was very helpful. I think understanding that contact relies upon the three aspects. Like you have to have the eye consciousness, and then you have to have the physical eye, and then you have to have something to see. The question I guess I have is, in if we're looking at the macrocosm of the rebirth process and coming into being, then how do the sixth sense fields, like, because the way it almost, or at least the way I think about it, or that I'm kind of understanding it, is almost like, how much do we create the universe in order to participate in it, basically? If that makes sense, like, how are the sixth sense fields arising from I consciousness and the I? Or is it like just that they're arising as a greater process than the individual nama rupa coming into being? Yeah, it's hard to put it into words, but
Okay,
yeah, I am
yeah.
wondering about that.
So yeah, so whether you're talking about a being coming into existence or a daily life, you kind of have to, and so you have to look at it a little bit differently. Because with the uh consciousness seeking a rebirth and then being conceived in the womb is one thing. But once we're born, it's more once we're born, then we start sorting things out from our conditioning as a human being and how we're raised. And so that's going to influence us greatly, what, like our social conditioning from how we're raised in the society and by our parents is going to influence us. But we are piecing things together moment by moment by moment from our experience at with the six sense basis. And then it's selective too, like I was saying. I might not be aware of the sound of the refrigerator until it's really quiet, but the refrigerator's been making noise all along. Or I have an aversion to the sound of the refrigerator, and suddenly it was quiet for a while, and then suddenly boom, And so, um, but this is a creation of my own experience, kind of from conditioning in the past. And um, so Namarupa, you were talking about Namarupa and Salayatana, because we have the physical form, like the physical eye and physical ear and physical nose, and then the mentality that goes along with that. And there was the list there of, it did include feeling. It had tanha. Let's see, Bhikkhu translation. We've got the mentality. Where's Namarupa? Somehow I'm not finding Namarupa here. It's down. Oh, because it's further down. It's a different order. See, feeling, that's Vedana. Perception is included in it. And the volition, contact, attention. All this is a mental phenomena. So we are creating our and the feelings that arise, perceptions, all these feelings, perceptions, and contact all arise from the six sense bases. So you have feeling based on the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, that contact, feeling arising from the contact, and perceptions arising from that contact. So without the physical form, without the mental form, the they're entwined in a way. It's hard to separate it out. It's almost like things are happening simultaneously, but somehow the Buddha was able to tease it all out. And um, so in our daily life, we can see more clearly, probably starting from the six sense fields or the six sense bases and the contact and the Vedana and uh, the tanha that's arising from that. That's pretty obvious, and probably the thing is to do is to really work on what's most clear to be able to see, to like within your existence, within the daily life. And then well, if you just think of Namarupa as mentality and materiality, the physical body and the mental, and this actually is the description as a shorthand for the five aggregates. The five aggregates are contained in Namarupa. So it's just a different way, a different angle to look at things, and if, what makes most ready sense for you to is a good to start with that. If some of it's harder to see just in our daily life, but I think the more we work with it, the more aware we are, the more still our minds become, the more we can see a broader picture. And this is what the Buddha lays all this out, but it's not like we're expected that we can deeply understand it right away. If we start working at what's understandable to us, then we can our understanding will grow from that. So how are we doing on time? So I was going through, I think we got through to, anyway, so we have name and form is Namarupa, Salayatana, the six sense fields, and contact with the six sense bases or fields. Phassa is contact, sense impingement, sense impression, sense experience. Vedana can also be understood as experience too. Feeling, sensation, hedonic tone. This is Bhante Analayo's translation, arising from the six sense bases. And it's a felt experience, a feeling, having a feeling tone, and it's causing to know is literally what Vedana, where the word came from. But when the Buddha talks about Vedana, he talks about pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings that arises from the six sense bases. And then craving, tanha, is literally thirst, directly based on above experience. So what it arises from the six sense bases, contact and Vedana. And then craving for continued existence or annihilation is another, that's bhava tanha. We have got kama tanha is craving for contact at the sense bases, the pleasant, mostly we want pleasant. And bhava tanha is craving for existence, and vibhava tanha. And upadana is clinging, grasping, or taking up. So this is grasping at sense pleasures, views, precepts, and observances, and theories of a self. So it's more complex than tanha. Tanha is more like just kind of a hedonic craving. And then the grasping doesn't is including sense pleasures, but it's a little more sticky when you're talking about views and like sila sila bata um, can be translated as um, like ritual. Like you're thinking that if I bow 3,000 times a day, I'm going to be enlightened. Or if I light the candles in a certain order and I, line everything up on my altar a certain way, and I do certain recitations, then the gods will be pleased and I'll go to heaven or something like that. So this is uh, and then atta is a self, attawa do upadana. So the uh, uh, theories or concepts of self. So this is types of upadana. So grasping to these things. And bhava is continued existence, existence in the sensual realm. This is where we are now, the sense realm, the realm of luminous form. And so if anyone who's entered jhana has touched in this realm and the formless realm, so the kama bhava is where we are now, the sense realm, and the rupa dana is a fine material, is another way of translating this. And then arupa is formless. So these are three states of existence for beings. And then jati, birth or rebirth or even conception. The Buddhist teaching believes that the conception is the start of the lifespan. So, and then jati is also in the Pali is also refers to caste class, like you're born into a certain class or caste. That was at the time of the Buddha, how that word was used. And then we have Jara, Maranam, old age and death. And this is referring to actual aging and death of the body. So I know you were talking about there, you can look at the rising and passing of phenomena, but that's more the microcosm, and then the macrocosm is the whole, all the rounds of existence. You can get expanded into the various lifetimes of rising and passing. So so this is the end of the sutta with ignorance. When ignorance fades away and ceases with nothing left over, choices cease. This is Bhante Sujata's translation for Sankara. Avijja Toiva Asewa Viraga Niroda Sankara Nirodo. When choices cease, consciousnesses cease. Sankara Nirodo, Vijnana Nirodo. And then this pay is just the ellipsis, and so on. And this is how this entire mass of suffering ceases. Ewa me tasa kewalasa dukkha khandasa nirodo. Oh, ti. So that's the end of the sutta. And here he's really explicitly talking about rebirth, the ending of rebirth. Other teachers, they speak about it differently. But I think we can't deny that the Buddha was talking about the rounds of samsara. And like I was saying, you can't take aspects of this to understand our current life situation. And the Four Noble Truths, Tanha is the culprit as far as the cause of suffering. He directly says that, craving is a cause of suffering. And then if we look at Vedana, it's the seeking pleasure or trying to, like, another day I was like standing out in the cold and I was feeling I was waiting for somebody and I felt this annoyance coming up. And then I was really realizing, oh, this is just unpleasant Vedana at the body, feeling cold. And then, this other person, they're trying to take care of whatever they're trying to take care of. And I'm just adding to my misery by getting annoyed. And then I was just experiencing it's just that it wasn't horrible. I wasn't dying or something. Yeah, it was just uncomfortable. And then I didn't have to add suffering to it. In fact, it wasn't really that bad. It was just it's sensation. So we can use these links, especially this in here, the six sense fields, the contact, Vedana and Tanha. We can focus on this area here and see how we cause suffering for ourselves or not. So and then we can and then the Namarupa is you can look at it, the aggregates, and how we create a sense of self. The Namarupa is more about and then it jumps down to here to Upadana because uh, the clinging aggregates is somehow they're translated as uh, uh, Upadana Kanda, the five aggregates of clinging or grasping. So in the Thai forest tradition, they really emphasize looking at the aggregates and how this Upadana is related to the the khandas, the aggregates. Um, and that's very practical. You can really see it too. You see a sense of self tied up with the aggregates. Um, so yeah, it can be a very practical teaching in this daily life, and then it's also a teaching for liberation from the rounds of samsara, for for realization of nibbana. Um, but we can start with what's making sense to us. So I'm gonna stop the screen share. And do you have any last questions before we close?
Yeah, I do have one more. So you were talking about basically, contact leads to feeling, the feeling leads to craving. It's kind of the weak link in dependent
Mhm.
origination. So we mindful of that. And then the craving is kind of the disembodied desire almost. Like it just kind of has a mind of its own. And then the craving conditions grasping, where you said kind of the sense of self emerges. And so I kind of see that as like, and then that conditions becoming, like coming into existence. So the craving, I'm like understanding kind of is this is where kind of the subject object duality emerges, and the sense of self, because you're talking about how the aggregates are related to upadana. So the sense of self, if I'm understanding correctly, emerges because we're clinging and grasping to the five aggregates in some way. And that's where this ignorant perception of a self out of the five aggregates that comes into being in order to try to pursue that craving that conditioned it. Like how does that
That
what
sounds
am I
great. That
uh,
sounds really good. Yeah, I think if you look at moment to moment to moment uh, arising of weight in us is really uh, a key, like you were saying, and how, but even the comfort, wanting the comfort from the cold is a kind of self-clinging, that, and then the concept of myself too, of me being standing out in the cold and waiting. and, and how can this be happening to me, and things like that. So we can see in our experience how we are creating a self, even just, this, with the physical contact or the mental contact. So so to see the relationship, like you were saying, is really important. And to see how it's arising in our lives, and also how one thing in the Buddhist teaching is to see, um being aware of how the unwholesome states may arise from that. And this is what we're protecting, I was trying to protect myself from the arising of the irritation was arising and not feeding it. The this is where we get a skillful use of this, is that we're protecting ourselves from further unwholesome mental states. And then the understanding, like you're saying too, of how we are creating a self that we're clinging to from 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 starting from our social conditioning, and that this deconstructing of that loosens its strength. So just that understanding of how this whole process works loosens it loses its power. It's not as strong. Or even just observing, oh, this is what's happening, and stepping back, then we don't have to get so lost in it.
Sadhu?
So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much, Ayasui John. I really appreciate it.
oh, you're very welcome. So we can end now with the homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutam Bhagavantam Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami.